Hey, Scott Jordan here for Jancast number 134, Thursday, October 27th, 2022, which means Halloween is right around the corner, which happens to be a serious holiday for me because it's my birthday on Halloween. And I have Mark Warner here. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hey, everybody. I also am really happy to announce that we've got a very special VIP guest.
Yeah.
And that would be Rodger McFadden. And Rodger's known throughout the entire world as a world-class industry consultant. He serves with me, actually, on the IICRC S400 Standards Committee. And he's written books and articles and all kinds of stuff. Rodger, we're thrilled to have you on here.
Thanks for joining us.
We feel honored.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it. And Scott, great to be with you today.
Okay.
Well, we all saw each other at the ISSA show.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives us the opportunity to have a little conversation about the ISSA show. What were your thoughts of the ISSA show there, Rodger?
Well, it was good to see it in person again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good situation. It's been a while where we could all get back together, but it's a great community of professionals across the whole sector where people get together, they learn from each other. And it's always extraordinary. It's great to see folks like you. I was able to stop by your booth, your Bullen booth, and have a chat with you guys. So so I thought it was really a good show this year.
Yeah, I agree. We weren't exactly sure, right, Mark? It was like I don't know about this, but we were committed. And before we get into that, we did have a lot of comments from people about how much they like Jancast, which is really nice to hear that. I didn't realize all these people, I mean, we have the stats and everything, but I think there's like an underground conduit to our posting, because the people that said they loved our show, I didn't realize that there was that many fans out there.
It was very heartwarming to have so many people come up saying, hey, we catch Jancast.com, every week, and love waiting to hear the latest news. And yeah, that was very, very encouraging. As it relates to the show, I have to say that going into it, I think by and large, a lot of the exhibitors and attendees were unsure of what to expect. And I think the expectations were not very high. And I know that as it relates to the hotels and some of the other food kiosks that were there, that some of the previous shows they've had this year were quiet, like a cricket festival. And you know what I mean by crickets. But anyway, they were overwhelmed by the number of people that showed up for the ISSA show. The food kiosks were backed up, sometimes a half-hour wait lines, and there weren't a lot of them open. And the hotel managers said they were completely caught off guard by the number of attendees. So, I'm saying that because I think in many ways far exceeded the expectations of attendees. A lot of us, like you, Rodger, that have been to a lot of these shows in the past, we want to use that as a barometer of what this show was. And certainly there's been some gigantic shows in years past.
Yeah.
But I'd say my expectations for this show were completely surpassed.
Yeah.
And Scott, you like to talk about the type of people that were there. Yeah,
there's I've said this before, but the quality of the people that come to the show is almost more important than the numbers. And in this case, I think the people that came were there to do business. We actually commented as an exhibitor. Some years we actually have to tie things down because people come by in waves with bags and just scrape off whatever we have on our counter. And none of that happened this year. So it was, real good from that standpoint. So good quality leads. We got quite a few to follow up on.
So your only disappointment, Scott, was you met with Bill. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, I was going to
that?
say, before we lead out the last thing on the last day, I think it's the last day. Yeah, it was on the last day. They had the business meeting, and Bill Balick is world renowned for his pithy comments about the bylaws change each year. And apparently this year there was absolutely nothing changed. so he didn't have anything to say. I don't think he actually showed up. So that was a little disappointing. But really good call out to Meredith Rubin, the HIGEA chair. She was awarded the Jack D. Romali Industrial Distinguished Service Award, which is really spectacular. That's given to individuals at least 10 years of outstanding service to the professional cleaning industry. So great kudos to her. Did a great job. Great group too, as well.
Yeah, as it relates to the HIGEA organization, obviously with my involvement with ISSA over the years, that's been a really fantastic organization aimed at inspiring and empowering professional women to be engaged with the cleaning industry. I mean, basically, they offer not just an education format, but a mentoring program where people that are up and coming, women in the industry looking for some advice on how to move forward in the changing currents of the industry, they're offered the opportunity to talk with people like Meredith Rubin. And HIGEA, actually, Scott, you did some research on that. Where'd that name come from?
Well, apparently there's a Greek goddess of cleaning, which I don't exactly know how that's possible from the Grecian days, but I believe there's also a Greek god that's known for auto scrubbers too. So not exactly sure about that, but we will put a link in the show notes below for anybody that wants to look into the HIGEA information and get some more details on that, because it's a great organization and really good for that award to go on. But let's get to the meat of the matter here.
Well, the meat of the matter is having this great opportunity to talk with a man as well known as Rodger McFadden. And I mentioned a little bit about you, Rodger, in the beginning. You are truly a respected author, and I've read many of your pieces, whether they were white papers, whether they were things that you've authored for other people's books. You're just an iconic figure in the industry. And I love that I have the opportunity to serve with you on the IICRC S400 Cleaning Standards Committee. You always seem to bring to that a level of science that goes above and beyond what, your average kind of frontline cleaning person might think about. And that's very powerful. And I know you do that kind of thing as an industry consultant as well. I know you've done a lot of things, and I'd love to have you talk about that a little bit with some of the things you've moderated and white papers you've been involved with.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the kind words. It's really about collaboration. It's about building relationships. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of meeting folks like you and others that continue to teach me. The older I get, the more I learn, and the more I recognize what I don't know. And I think it's good to be connected that way. My background is kind of interesting, and I won't go into great detail, but I've formulated cleaning products for over 30 years. That's not what I do now, because I took all of what I learned from that and have marched it forward into other avenues like green chemistry, sustainability, the ESG movement today. There's just a tremendous amount of activity within the cleaning sector that I've had the privilege to work in. And then I served for almost 10 years at Staples as their senior scientist, which really taught me a lot about which I didn't have a lot of background in. But I don't view retail any different than distribution in the sense that it still requires people to do their job every day. It has a supply chain, it has customers, it has challenges, just like all of our businesses do. So I've had the privilege of also meeting government folks at EPA and FDA and OSHA, getting to build relationships with them, understanding that they're there to serve us, and they're only carrying out regulations that they didn't necessarily make. Those were made by our legislative folks, but they have to carry out that hard work every day, and that's not easy. I've had the privilege of meeting academia. University of Massachusetts at Lowell, University of Oregon. I live here in Oregon, and Jim Hutchinson, head of green chemistry, that really built the first green chemistry laboratory where he teaches his students all about green chemistry. And green chemistry is really about preempting. That is, it's taking chemicals of concern out of products at the design stage. So it's really recognizing that we have chemicals in products today that probably don't belong there. But at the time that we made those products, we only used what we knew, and we've learned a lot since then. So it's really trying to understand better, how to make products and eliminate chemicals of concern at the design stage. So I'll stop there. There's a lot. Been in this big ocean here for a long time, and I look forward to learning from you guys today, actually.
Well,
Rodger,
I know that.
let me jump in. Rodger, when you were in our booth, we had a nice discussion about back in the day, before Staples, it was Coastwide Laboratories, and I think he told me that at the very beginning, it was kind of like, how do you end up with a decent product without having cost issues and performance and all that? That was we don't think about it that much now, but back then that was a real issue for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a big issue for me. It was also an issue for you, right? Because you guys at your company, you were building at the same time, you recognized this shift, this move, if you will, towards consumers wanting more credibility. They wanted to know that the products that they were buying and using every day were safer, and we wanted to create more sustainable pathways. But the challenge was our palette was limited. We really didn't have the kind of set of chemicals we do today. And I think, Scott, it's because of the work we did back then to really push us forward that drove this, because at that time, there were really only 5 products, I think, that were actually DFE, EPA, designed for the environment certified. Back in that day, maybe 5, maybe 25 at the most. Today, there's almost 2,000. There's hundreds of companies today that are investing in those certifications that weren't even, they were laggards. They were actually almost laughing at the notion that green made sense back in that day. So I had to reach out to find actually materials in Europe that I brought into the U.S. And the reason I went to Europe for those materials is because Europe had strong regulations at that time to eliminate such things as nonylphenol phthalates. Things today that we just, as formulators today, we don't even use them anymore. But back then, almost everybody used NPEs, and today hardly anybody's using them anymore. And it was because the supply wasn't there. So, and then the cost issue, of course, it's all about supply, right? And demand. So as we begin to shift towards these alternatives, it drove the price down to where they were much more close to where the other chemicals were. So we've seen a real shift over these last few decades. There's also, back then, there were 2 things that were big barriers, Scott. You remember this. One was the cost of the product. The other was performance. There was perception. It was really a perception. Us formulators never formulate. If we do it right, we never formulate and ignore performance, ever. You can't. Because if a product doesn't perform, people aren't going to buy it. If they don't buy it, then you haven't really done anything significant. So performance had to be front and center in this. And affordability needed to be there, but we needed to change the thinking from the price of something to the cost of something, because they're not the same. And if we only look at the price per gallon of something, we don't look at the diluted cost, then shame on us, because we really, as end users, should be thinking about what is the cost of something, the total of something. Also, we never thought about the externality costs of dumping something into our waste stream, down our drains, or into our air, or getting into our bodies. We never really thought about the cost of that, because that is expensive. Someone's paying for it. It's probably communities. If businesses aren't paying for that later on, communities are paying for it. Guess what? We're a community, and our tax dollars go towards that. So I think we began to think a lot as companies about the positive impact we can have towards the environment. And I think I really compliment you, Scott, and your leadership, and Mark Your company's been front and center in this for a long time. You didn't just start this journey. Like a lot of companies are just starting this journey. That's the thing that surprises me. ISSA just announced their first kind of sustainability group. And it's like, wow, 25 years we were doing it. Today they're announcing it. And that's great. I compliment them and applaud. Well, where have we been? It's like we have companies in ISSA, many of them that have been doing this for several decades. So I'm really glad ISSA is doing this. And I hope that they'll kind of catch up a bit as we go along here.
Yeah. Some of the things I've seen that have shifted a little bit since wasn't it 2012, the presidential mandate that suggested that all government agencies use a quote green, preference towards green products. And that put the emphasis all on products. But what I've seen over the years, Rodger, and you've probably seen it too, is that people are also starting to look at the processes involved and whether or not some of the processes can be made to be greener as well. It has to do with the amount of water used and what kind of impact things like that have. So that's been a big change. I know that the ISSA's program, their SIMS GB program, is designed to be a way of documenting or certifying that a service provider knows how to abide by all the green initiatives that an organization might have in place. So they understand that there's a chemistry side of it and there's also a process side of it. Do you see that as well?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, just putting a green certified product into a cleaning operation doesn't make them green. Okay. It may fool them into thinking they are because they can point to that and tell everybody, hey, we use green products, etc. The problem with that is that if the processes that they're using to clean are still flawed, if they still cross-contaminate, they still don't follow good systematic thinking and good common sense processes, then the product itself isn't going to solve that problem for them. So processes and equipment, tools, understanding, training, learning, all those things have to be part of a really robust cleaning program. And I don't see that sometimes. I go into buildings. I've been into green certified buildings and looked at their cleaning operations, and they're not any different than they were before. But they have that big logo on the outside of their building, says they're LEED certified. But then when I go and dig in deeper, I don't see, I go to their closet, the custodial closet. That's where I usually look to see, kind of measure it. And I go in and everything's all over the place, and the tools are dirty, and the mop buckets are half full of dark water, and mops are not properly cleaned. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and how do we get here? Well, it's a lack of training. It's a lack of systems. It's a lack of kind of paying attention to detail. All those things that we try to teach every day as we talk to the folks out there. And then remember, sustainability is not just about the environment either. That's the other thing to remember. Sustainability, environmental pillar, there's really three pillars to sustainability. And we know what those are. Most people can tell you what those three are. But it's the environmental pillar, which we really think of it when we think of green. But there's the economic pillar. That is, if the organization itself can't be, can't thrive, and it can't be a long-term positive impact, provide that, then we lose. And then the last one's social. Often that gets missed. How we treat people, the things that we do every day, the way we respect janitors or custodians, to walk by them, to ignore them like they're a piece of the furniture, is atrocious. These human beings work hard every day. They put hours of hard work and labor every day to make our buildings clean. And yet we often just treat them as a third-class citizen. We've got to change that. And that's part of sustainability too. We need to start treating each other with respect, and no matter where we are in the kind of hierarchy of things. I often will, when I'm in a hotel, I often stop by and chat with the housekeeper for a little bit. And that lifts their day. Honestly, most people are like yelling at them, how come you haven't done my room yet? I need some towels. And I stop, and I think it kind of shocks them because I actually just have a conversation and with them, and it's because they're people like us.
Yeah.
So those are, to me, are really important. Yeah.
I think you bring up a great point, and that is the challenge that's always existed, not only in the green area of products and processes, but in the cleaning industry in general. And that is people trying to come up with, what's my return on investment, and is it really just about cleaning? Is it just about making things look and smell nice? Or is there some other aspect that ties in? I know the ISSA did a value of clean program that tried to reinforce the idea that the return on investment on cleaning goes well beyond just making it look and smell nice. There's a benefit to the facilities, to the building itself, and ways of preserving that as an asset. And there's also the health and safety end of it, of not letting people get sick. And I think green movement is something that people had been short-sighted on looking at, and that it's a bigger equation to figure out that ROI, just as you've said, that it has an impact on us socially and an impact on us economically. So I think that's a great point that you make, Rodger.
Yeah. Well, I think you just brought up something that's really significantly important. CEOs today are changing and shifting a bit. Scott, you as the leader in your organization are doing this. And it is that at first they thought sustainability, or going green, if you will, if you want to use that, that's an expense. They viewed it as an expense. I don't view it as an expense at all. I view it as an investment. It's a value proposition that you can build within your organization, your bottom line. I don't think going green means that you have to give up some of your profits or you have to give up revenue. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. I think that companies are recognizing that when you invest in this, and that means spending a few dollars up front to do these things, the return on investment is 5 times better than what it is traditionally. Now, it wasn't that 20 years ago. Today it is, because there's much more uptake, right?
Yeah. What's interesting is how much that's actually been documented. I mean, a lot of the companies now that do mandate having a green and sustainable initiative in place are able to document their return on investment. I'm thinking of Fortune 500 companies. And of course, we've all I've seen this happen within the government itself. I mean, they're looking at it as something as a bigger picture right now too. DoD contractors, federal, state, and local governments. Certainly, when I say local governments, often I'm referring to things like international airports, which are normally governed by the cities they exist in. And they all have very strong green initiatives in place. And because of that, I think there's been put a higher value on some of the certifications that are made available out there to document that somebody's on board with this the right way. And you have some thoughts, I know, on some of the certifying bodies. I know back in the day, people used to talk about the fact that there were over 500 certifying bodies in the world, but only 2 or 3 that were actually recognized as being particularly valid in the US. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they need to be credible. They need to be independent. And they need to be multi-attribute standards, in my mind. A single attribute claim is getting real close to greenwashing. And we have a real problem with greenwashing today.
We have to give credit to Scott Case for the term greenwashing. And Scott actually lives about 3 miles from me.
Well, I saw Scott actually at ISSA, and I had a nice conversation with him. And he's in the corporate world a bit now because he's heading up the retail, one of the retail associations in sustainability. And he's a real change maker. They had the 6 sins of greenwashing, for instance, that they published that was really, really useful to kind of have us focus a bit on that we need to avoid this world of greenwashing because it's getting rampant. It's almost worse now than it was when we first started. And I think it's because companies were laggards and they're trying to get on board the train.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're just making some claims just so they can make it look like they're green, and it's really harmful to their organizations because it hurts their brand, their credibility. People really, they don't expect businesses to be perfect, but they do expect businesses to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think the certifications that we're talking about, like Green Seal and like EPA Safer Choice and like UL Eco Logo, which came out of Canada, those are the three primary ones that in the cleaning industry are considered to be credible, independent, very strong vetted standards. And I think these standards need to be published. They need to be clear. They need to be understandable. They need to be realistic. They need to be measurable. All of those things have to be part of a real solid standard. And IICRC, which we're working on the cleaning standard now, S400, that rigor that we're going through. It takes hours and hours and hours of discussion among our group, right? And it can talk, a whole hour about one sentence, but that's important because that's really making certain that we think through these things and throw something out there. So I think these certifications are incredibly important, not only to our companies, Scott, because we want to make sure our brand's protected. We want to make sure that we don't just make self-claim everything. We want to make sure there's a credible organization that validates what we're saying. And as much as that can be kind of a pain at times to have to do, it's well worth the investment because someone else is doing it and someone's looking, and we can use that in our marketing. And you, Mark, for sure, really like that, where you can talk to customers and so forth about this, tell them about it. So
I think it's kind of worth mentioning a few points that for those that don't really know what greenwashing really is, some simple examples of it that happened back in 2012. And to your point, Rodger, are actually happening now with the laggards that are trying to catch the train. But they're saying things like, well, it's biodegradable, so I guess it must be green. Well, uranium-235 is biodegradable. It just takes 250,000 years, right? And things are natural, it must be green. Well, rattlesnake venom is natural. Doesn't mean it's safe or green in any way. So there are things that people tap into to try to stretch the truth. And these organizations, Green Seal and Eco Logo, and of course UL now, they have a lot of different benchmarks that you have to hit in order to make a claim. And it's not just one thing. And that's kind of why I love having you talk about that. If somebody wanted to get more information about what are the requirements for standards for organizations like Green Seal or UL's Eco Logo or even EPA's program, which is for basically their Safer Choice and their DFE program, where would they go for that?
Yeah, the good news is today there's a lot of great information available on the websites for each of those organizations. For instance, EPA Safer Choice, which I really like that program a lot because it's at every chemical at every level. So some of the standards don't look to that detail. I like the fact that they force us to look at every chemical down to zero. That's challenging. So sometimes you can't get a product through it because of that sometimes. But to me, that's good because it makes us reach higher and try harder.
Yeah.
Great. But you just go to the EPA.gov website and put in Safer Choice, and it'll talk about the standard, have a copy of the standard. It's just,
well, Rodger, couldn't they do the easy way and just reach out to Rodger McFadden at McFaddenAssociates.com and engage you with your services?
We will put a link below the show notes down here.
That's good. You guys are good. See, I'm not a marketing and sales guy. So
neither are we.
Thanks for helping me.
Well, we really have enjoyed this conversation immensely. And Rodger, it's just really wonderful for you to invest some time with us with Jancast.com. Really, really grateful.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was nice chatting with you at the show as well. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we'll continue this. It's a journey, and by the way, sustainability is a team sport. It takes all of us to. No one of us can do this by ourselves. So
I like that a lot. Thank you, Rodger.
Thank you, guys.
And you know, in upcoming Jancast, we'll probably re-engage some thoughts regarding this whole topic. And there's also some things happening on the horizon that we need to be aware of and related to infectious diseases. RSV is out there. It's been on the news a lot the last couple of days. Respiratory syncytial virus. RSV.
Great way to end the show, Mark. Boy.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm trying to bait the hook. Like, you need to come back. We need you to come back for other breaking news. Yeah, stay tuned.
Mayhem is coming.
Well, there's a lot more to this, that's for sure. I mean, they're just touched the surface on a lot of this. So it'd be dive in, dig a little deeper sometime in the future. So
we'd love that. Thank you, Rodger.
Have a good one. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.